Hey there, Bob from Oregon's Constant Garden. Welcome to the OCGFAM show. To you, my YouTube buddies, what's going on? Let me know in the comments. We'll talk about it after the show. But right now, let's just get into the show. Interesting, obscure maybe topic today. Can you, when growing your cannabis, instead of curing it in a room, hanging it up and drying it out, can you just run the plant out of water when you get to the end of your grow and cure it that way? Scott talks about it at length, and it's an obscure topic, but it was interesting just to hear him kind of work through it. So please watch the clip. I'll talk to you after.
Stephen Mayo. Mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise.
I want your DOR. Can you talk about drying the pot out completely before harvest? Is that a thing? Is this something that should be practiced with
I
nectar?
think we've spoken on this way back.
Yeah, but I mean, you're going to dry it when you hang it up, not when you have it in the ground,
but if
right?
they're not drawing up any more moisture at the end and the plant's literally cannibalizing the moisture out of its stem to do that last bit of a cure in the tops.
Yeah.
I've seen
it work, but it's...
Oh, yeah, no. I mean,
it's a high wire act, would you say?
It's not for everybody, that's for sure. And I know the ones that have tried it and had great success with their outcome, because it's like curing on the plant almost. Mm-hmm. You know, they leave the light cycle on and they... the same time frame, but they just let them dry out in the pot versus drying them out hanging, and they get a little different level of sugar production at the very end.
Would you say that some of these, though, are like our good friend who is very good at growing but doesn't know a fucking thing about growing? That people that do things of this nature are oftentimes very natural growers, and that this is not for you
at all, and they made a huge mistake, and then their mistake was an awesome outcome. It's one of those for sure.
There's a lot of people that do crazy stuff that it works out well because they have such a feel for it.
Yeah.
But you and me,
the problem there is if I know this is a 9-week genetic and I don't want to have it get over ripened, by going 12 weeks. And I'm feeding up until the 7th or 8th week, and then I'm doing my final flush or ripening. Then to dry out the pot, that means I'm putting it into week 10, 11, and 12, maybe 10 and 11.
Yeah.
So now I'm 2 more weeks on a 9-week genetic, which then could potentially ruin the flower because it becomes overripe, and now you've got nothing but amber or dark trichomes, which then that's just a whole different headspace.
Okay.
I think it really comes down to the grower, but the guys that we knew that messed up when we were doing that experiment, and they just shoved everything aside, let them dry out, and just die in the corner. And that was some of the finest flour we've ever had. We know that there's a benefit to it, but I would hate to leave this episode and having a bunch of our listeners jump on this. All right, I'm at week 7. I'm just going to do 2 weeks of just drying out, because I think most people aren't prepared to dry them all the way out for the last 5-7 days, because there's a high load of nutrition still in the potting soil. There's, the flowers aren't ripening. They're not getting the fade they want. But if you have everything else that's looking great and you've done 5 days of good flushing, then letting them go to bone dry to harvest them, it speeds up the harvest process a little bit.
So these were professional drivers on a closed circuit to some extent, but why not try it with one plant?
Well, that's the problem too, is that a lot of you can try it on one plant if you know you can get them out of the room by the next time your next veg round comes into bloom, because it's a timing situation where a lot of guys are on these set schedules, and now we're going to throw a 2-week dry out period. Then I've just wasted 2 weeks on not producing flower in my space. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the guy that we were talking about earlier, and I think we did a show like way back about the guy when we were having a mess with bloom chaos for us, and he killed all his plants. They starved to death because we couldn't feed them enough. Yeah, and so they just died in the room, and he took the other half of the room and just kept them the same way, but just left these over there mad as hell and didn't even want to harvest them. He was so mad at us. And then at the very end, he harvested those because the flower all looked fine. The plants died. I mean, they starved to death, but the buds got huge. And when he brought those in, the quality of the fruit that died in the pot versus the stuff he finished was greater. So we're like, oh man, that's something very interesting. So what he did was he built a death room, if you will. He had a veg room, a flower room, and a hallway in between that he'd stick all the plants in at the end of their grow, and then just leave them on a 12 and 12 light cycle until they completely dried out. And then he would harvest them that way. And it was like, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't recommend it for everybody by any means. If you want to try one of your headier genetics that has more oil content and really it dry one out on the side.
It's juicier to start with to where it can...
Well, you won't be as mad if you only ruin one plant than 10.
Yeah.
I mean, you ruined 10 plants. I didn't tell you to. That's an experiment you tried. But we've had people do it, and there is a benefit to drying them all the way out. Yeah. That's for sure.
People have jumped off cliffs and been blown back up again, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, what do you think? Informative, entertaining, helpful, agree, disagree, questions, comments? Throw them in the comments and we'll talk about it. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. The OCG Fam Show. It's pretty good. It happens every day. It's the OCG Fam Show. See you tomorrow.